morning to everyone. If you'd like to stand for the start of our meeting, welcome along to the final council meeting of this triennium, 28th September 2022. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai, ehi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti hei mauri ora. And the council affirmation. Let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of the Selwyn District and its communities. So just acknowledge that we've got three retiring councillors and the election may show us that more of us are retiring than currently know it, but Jeff, Mark and Murray, thank you for your contributions through this term, and there will be an opportunity at the end of this meeting for you and actually for anyone else that would like to just reflect and share based on the last 3 years at the end of the term. I have purchased three gifts for those three members, and if there is something that, if there's another person that doesn't make it through the election, they'll also receive something from the new mayor, if it's not me. The three are Pounamu that were chosen, and Permiria is blessed and heard from the Pounamu its name. And a little bit of its meaning, and so there's a card that comes with that for you. Mark, Hui Mai is the name of the stone that you'll receive, and it's about bringing together to make as one. And Jeff, you're here. Teperika is the stone for Jeff, and again, it was interesting. Pumiri's a similar message around gathering and bringing together. And Murray, Te Aka, which means the root of grounding and of knowledge. So I'm going to pass these round during the meeting, and feel free to hold them, and if you want to grab them out you can and touch them, and I'll give them to the three of you at the end of the meeting, but just a chance for everyone to connect with that gift today as they're passed around. And there's no apologies today, and I've had no identification of any extraordinary general business that's not on the agenda. No conflicts of interest that aren't already on the register. There's no public forum today, and so we move to the confirmation of minutes from the 14th of September. Thank you, Mark. And a seconder, Bob, thank you. Is there any discussion on those minutes? All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? Declare it carried. David, your report's on tab 7, page 16 of today's agenda.
Mr Mayor, thank you, and councillors, good afternoon. So the report starting on page 16, a lot of this is just information for the benefit of the community. A couple of things I want to specifically talk about. First one, Culture Fest events. Hopefully you've taken the opportunity to go to at least one of the events that's playing out across the district this month. The thing I want to focus on is our continued strong quarterly economic growth. For the year to June 2022, our economy grew by 6.2%, placing us as the seventh fastest growing economy in New Zealand over that period of time. Also, June 22 quarter, our GDP growth placed us second in the country. So it is not slowing down. It will continue well into the future. Residential housing consents have risen by 10.8, 5,300 new dwellings in the June quarter. Doing the maths, that's about 2,100 consents for the year. Put that in perspective, 3 or 4 years ago, we're doing about 1,200. So that's where our growth is going. Consumer spending continuing to grow, 13.3% increase in the year to June 2022. Interestingly, national increase was nil during the same period of time. So again, income levels, but also I think a reflection of the number of new businesses that have been established out here as well. Also want to acknowledge the Melbourne Community Board with their Community Service Awards, which run a couple of weeks back. Tremendously successful evening. There were a number of recipients that I've identified on page 18 of my report, and it was a great night to be part of, so congratulations to the board. Mr Mayor, I know that we're doing valedictories at the end of the meeting, but I just on behalf of management and staff want to say thank you to councillors. In my report I've singled out 3. Murray, Mark and Jeff, who are retiring, but I want to extend my comments to all of you. And in doing so, say that staff and management very much value the strong relationship that we have with our governors, which enables the collective us to be able to deliver the jobs, the projects, the activities that we've been able to do. We'll put a wee laminated A3 on your desk just as a bit of But over the past 3 years, we have delivered a huge list of activities and projects for the benefit of our fast-growing community. Growth has been phenomenal. As I say, it's not slowing down. We've also had challenges of new legislation, challenges of just the environment that we've operated in. But sincerely, on behalf of staff and management, thank you all. Interest. Happy to answer any questions, Mr Mayor.
There is a report in today's Selwyn Times that Te Kaha representatives, Christchurch City Council staff and elected members held a discussion support for the new stadium. I was wondering if there's any comment on those discussions.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, I am aware of that comment. Clearly a case of mistaken identity. Mark, I was not at that meeting, so, but the Mayor may have some comment.
I think the meeting that it refers to, as I reported last time, was a briefing to Dan Gordon and myself, and I think Hiranui was present as well. It was the day before Christchurch made their funding decision, and it was a heads up on what the proposal was being put forward to Christchurch City Council at the time. So since then we know that Christchurch has approved that increased budget, and that money along with the government funding is enough to complete the build of the stadium.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou, te rangatira mā, tēnā katoa. Thank you, David, for the report. Great quarterly economic report. As it suggests, a high amount of growth. What isn't included in here, and I don't know whether it is standard, is the wage equity indices to see where our lowest to our highest are paid and how we're bringing that together, or I think that's what's
across the district or across the council. Yeah. So no, that's not included in that Infometrics survey, but certainly if it's something that you or councillors are interested in, we could discuss that with them around the opportunity to get that included.
Grant.
Item 3 on the Chief Executive's paper about the discharge of council committees. I'd like an assurance that there will be scheduled triennium elections for those committees post the election of the new council, which reflects the committees that still wish to continue as committees of council. I think in the last triennium end, we actually allowed the committees of council to continue until the elections of the council at large, and then there was a triennium election held post that, rather than being a gap with no representation in our community. So can you give me some assurances on that, please?
I'll note that and I'll discuss it with Denise Grant.
I'm looking for ministered assurances, I suppose, rather than a discussion. you want me to do a resolution in that
No,
direction?
I just noted in the minutes. That's all you need to do.
So
We'll take the lead.
So are we continuing to allow them to continue until their own elections, post-council elections, or is there a discharge of council committees with an undertaking to have elections post the election of council at large?
So through you, Mr Mayor, I'll defer to Denise, who's running that
Just
project.
in terms of the expectation is that triennially the committees of council, community committees of council are discharged at the same time councillors, and there is an opportunity when the new council is elected for them to make a decision about the continuance or not of community committees, and that is what has happened historically, and so that is the expectation at the moment, and that's what we have communicated. We're not aware that that process has changed.
Without getting into long-range debate, Denise, I think we've debated this quite substantially over the triennium. I don't think that this council has given direction that the incoming council would make a decision contrary to what we've decided to allow ones that wish to continue. So while it might be seen as the incoming council having the right to disestablish those committees, I think that would be a bad faith move from us.
I think we need to remind ourselves that these committees of council are subcommittees of this council, and so if this council isn't in existence, then we don't have any subcommittees in existence over that time. So it's really about the assurance of what will be happening post-election that you're seeking grant, because in the interim...
Assurance that the commitments we've given to those committees will continue post this dissolution, because it's the way it's phrased in your report. It's dissolved and may not be... There's no indication that it's going to be other resolution of those committees, and we've indicated those communities quite clearly that those that wish to remain a committee of council will do so. So if that's the case, we need to provide processes post-election for them to have elections and get going again.
Just on that.
Deborah?
Thank you. Just on that, I'd like to seek clarification with regards to community committees. I thought they had a responsibility to act until the 30th of June 2023 in the resolution that we passed. If that's the case, then we need assurance that that resolution is not being overturned. That resolution stays in place for those community committees, given that I don't think 6 months has lapsed with regards to standing orders when that was actually moved. So it may have, I don't know, but I'm just highlighting that we've given them an assurance till the 30th of 2023, and then it would be re-looked at that time. If I need to be corrected, please someone come and help me, but that's my reading.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll defer to Denise again, but just remind everybody that we're talking about the next item on the paper, not the one that I've just presented.
Dave's got a couple of papers there. Denise?
I guess my understanding, and my apologies, I'm not entirely sure what is written in the Chief Executive's report, but as I understand it, it is a standard part of the process that at the triennial period of the triennial elections, all committees of council are discharged, and then it's the incoming council that determine whether or not they will have committees in the future. And while it may not change the current arrangement, that is the prerogative, as I understood it and understand it, of the incoming council to determine that. So, yeah, that's the communication that we have had with committees, is that there is this process that occurs triennially and there's no change to that. Yeah,
we're following the same process as we do at each election. And
Okay.
it's, Denise, the reference is on page 33 of the agenda.
You're right, Mr Chief Executive. My apologies, I skipped ahead of paper. I missed I'm sorry.
Murray?
Should we wait till the paper?
Well, we're discussing it now.
2 for 1 deal, Murray.
Look, acknowledge that this is a process, but I think, if I'm paraphrasing Grant here a wee bit, I hope, and he'll leap in if I've got this wrong, but it is about us signalling as a governance group that the intent of this is not to discharge them in perpetuity. It is about discharging them at the end of this triennium.
Yeah.
And the intent is, and we've made that clear as Deborah has articulated through our previous decision, the intent is that they have the right and ability to re-establish until that date when it becomes reviewed again. Acknowledging, of course, and it's not my place as an outgoing councillor to tell an incoming councillor how to vote, and they will make those decisions on their own merit. But I think it is a clear message. I don't want to be the one who, at my last meeting, discharges them with no intent for them to be re-established. So that, I think that is a point that needs to be made publicly.
David, did you say else?
No.
Okay, so we'll deal with the first report that David has today. It's just that we received that report, which includes the infometrics piece. So Nicole and Malcolm, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. And against? There it carries. David, were there other matters in your second report?
So the other day, just full clarity, so I've been asked by a number of people in the room, at what point does the current council continue on to, and at what point does the new council start? So in my report at the top of page 32, hopefully it's been made clear that existing elected members remain in office until the day after the result is declared. At that point, the new council take office, but until they're sworn in, they can't actually act. And that's what the point of the majority of the recommendations on page 31 are about. It just gives the power to the Chief Executive to act on council's behalf if there is any situation. I've got to say, in the years that I've been a CE, there has never been a situation. The one exception would potentially be emergency events, but there are particular protocols that you follow through that. So it's a procedural paper, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So on that, there might be an expectation that the day of the election is the last day for councillors. And what you're saying is there could be a situation where the council might be required to act 2 or 3 days after that.
Yeah, so hypothetically, there's an event happens on Monday, the 10th of October. The current council, those of you sitting around the table currently, are still deemed in law to be in office, and therefore you have the power to act if there's an emergency meeting called to do something, or documents that need to be signed or something like that. Hypothetically, 13th of October is the date that the result is declared, so the day after that, the 14th, is when the current council cease to exist, and when the new council is empowered to take office. But as I say, until they're actually sworn in, and we've got that scheduled for November 2, that council cannot act.
Murray.
Yeah, I think you've answered what I was going to ask, David, but I'm just reminded of a scene from The Godfather. Just when you think you're out, you get dragged back in again.
You do, yes. Yeah. I've got your number, Murray, it's all right.
That's just like I've been saying to people, today is our last scheduled meeting as a council. It might not be our last meeting.
Correct.
Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just for clarity on point 3 and to Grant's question, the community committees, although discharged, will continue to operate as community committees up to the point of the elections and the coming into office of the new council, unless the new council decide otherwise? Okay, thank you.
So we've got recommendations 1 through 4, Mr. Mayor, on page 31.
Thanks, Malcolm and Bob. And any further comments? All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? There it carries. We then move to item tab 9, page 52, relationship agreement between Selwyn District Council and Te Taumutu Runanga.
So it gives me a huge amount of pleasure, Mr. Mayor, to be able to bring this to the table. It's something that we've been having discussions with Te Taumutu Runanga for a number of months, and also have had several workshops around this table around forging closer relationships. The agreement is very much an enabling document, recognising our respective roles and responsibilities across the Selwyn District Rohe. And what it does, it encourages stronger engagement, stronger relationship, support for one another, acknowledging our respective commitments under the treaty, under legislation, and also developing annual work programs to enable us both to go forward. It is my intention as the author of this report to see that this is the first of a number of relationship agreements that we put in place. We've got to start somewhere, and for me this is a very, very solid starting place. I acknowledge those who have been party to the discussions, particularly members of the Te Amutu Runanga Executive as well, who have fed into the document that we have today. It's a simple document, it's not overwritten, it simply sets out the outcomes that we seek and the roles of each respective party. It will be reviewed on a very regular basis, and it is intended we have a we then. The intention is that we formally sign the agreement on that date, assuming it's passed by council this afternoon. Mr. Mayor.
Happy to move this recommendation, but I do have a question that also ties in to the next report. Representation support, and I don't believe that's been well explained to council or community what that actually means, and I'm wondering if that actually applies in part to the first bullet point under 3 outcomes in the relationship agreement, and perhaps the Mr. Chief Executive or Mr. Mayor would like to comment on those 2, how they interact and relate.
You go first.
We're going to be talking about 2 reports, one after the other, as we just did with the community space, but we'll bring them together as the same topic. So following the discussions we had here around the Better Off support funding, we had a follow-up meeting with Te Amutu Runanga, and had a similar discussion about the Better Off funding with the chair of Ngāi Tūherere, Tanya. During those discussions, it was raised around what does council's role in seeing a new age of cooperation occur between mana whenua and ourselves. And that's if you remember the final paragraph to the Ngāi Tahu apology. The funding agreement for the Better Off funding includes some pretty extensive criteria around iwi engagement and what is required from DIA to meet their expectations of being more than consulting mana whenua. Actually, what does collaboration and partnership look like? And so we have put 100,000 in there for each of the 2 runanga to enable that partnership to be to grow next year or in the new term. And it's not money that we're gifting over. It's not part of this agreement to say here's a cheque for an amount of money. It's money that the council will hold and be able to contribute towards whatever the new council might think is appropriate in that partnership and collaboration space with both runanga. Mark, does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Cool. Shane.
Tēnā rā tātou. E te whare tēnei te mana whenua o Te Amutu Runanga mai te rui hiki tēnā katoa. I'll save that discussion for the next paper, if you like, and just wanted to also commend those involved bringing this paper forward, work that's gone into it. And you're right, David, it is a sacred document, if you like, and I appreciate the fact that you've said that it's living, so that it continues to be reformed and rediscussed and continues to stay alive for the betterment of not only the relationships between the 2, but also our district and our communities. And I've been quite open about it from the start, and we've, in our long-term plan, decided that we would fund $50,000 a year for support relationships. And the development of this document brings the purpose or the clarity behind that together, if I'm understanding it correctly. And I appreciate again the work that's gone into it. What I'm concerned about, and I've said that from the start, is that the the phrasing in the resourcing. Part 3, recognise and resolve resourcing, and quite binding words behind either there's a lack of resource, and what does that look like? Is it human or is that capital expenditure, money? And what does signing this agreement tie us into outside of the long-term plan funding that we've already committed? And as you've said, Sam, further on we'll have that discussion around the addition of the Better Off Funding transitional package. But I just want to, I think this document's crucial for the development of our district, and I would prefer it to be acknowledged and signed by the new council.
It's going to be. Through you, Mr Mayor, the answer to your question, Shane, about resourcing capacity and capability is principally in terms of human resourcing. So there's significant demand on both parties at the moment as a result of legislative requirements to engage with each other. And this, A, enables us to do that, B, recognises the skill base that is there and the role and responsibility, and encourages us to collaborate as best we can.
Thank you, David. Can I just have, am I allowed to just one final thing? I think there's in my mind anyway, there's a lack of clarity around the responsibilities of local government to an agreement or a treaty agreement signed between Runanga or Iwi and the Crown, and just what that responsibility looks like down at the local level. And to me, it's there's an extra commitment by ratepayers that it's already been agreed to at the central government level between taxpayers, and then to continue to absorb resourcing, like you say, responsibilities through local ratepayer funds is something still I'm not clear on, and so perhaps that's a discussion for the next.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. I think there's something, well, I know it's something that's been picked up in the future for local government discussion, and the question that they are looking to answer there is, rather than what does local government mean under the Crown signing the treaty, it's what is local government's response to living in a bicultural nation and a continued partnership with mana whenua and Maori moving forward. So there is that specific piece that does need an answer, but there's also the broader part about how we move into our future, which I think the future of local government is certainly focused on. Thank you. Grant.
Just a question of clarity around point 6, annual work programme. Just for absolute clarity, these priorities and agreements are an annual plan and long-term plan. Does that mean they will then be in our annual plan and long-term plan submission process for the community to submit on?
Yeah.
So it's not a...
Through you, Mr Chair, yes, Grant, that would generally be the expectation.
So it's not a behind the back bike sheds, it's open, transparent, and...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Deborah. I'd say thank you to everyone for the work to do this. I think it's a joint effort by all councillors and our staff that have this relationship to get this far. There's been 2 or 3 of you that have lent in pretty deep into this, and so thank you for what you've done. And this year, particularly Mark and Malcolm, you've been the 2 that have connected in with the Runanga, but the rest of us have all done significant work in this relationship piece. So thank you for doing that over many years to grow this to the point where we can sign something which really solidifies the way forward. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Better Off support package is on tab 10, page 59 of today's agenda. David.
So, Mr Mayor, again, 4th of my 4 reports today. So firstly, acknowledge a huge amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes in terms of compiling the Better Off support package projects. Acknowledge the workshops that we've had with council over the past 4 or 5 months, and also the dialogue that we've had with DIA and our external consultants who have helped put this together again. The public, just a reminder that we're talking about a Better Off package offered by central government under the Three Waters Reform, first tranche of $5.59 million and the second tranche of $16.77 million. That first tranche to be spent within a 5-year period. Our principal project that we've identified is the Lincoln Town Centre Upgrade Stage 1, where we're looking to allocate $5.1 million. Also allocating funds into feasibility for cycleways. There are 2 of those, leased in health facility and Runanga representation support. And to that last one, remind councillors that funding is from 2024. So if you think back to the conversation we had on the previous paper, it's about allowing that dialogue to take place as we work through the establishment of the relationship agreement that we've got with Taumutu, and also how we further those with other Runanga and iwi representation across the district. We have given to Internal Affairs for their review a copy of our Better Off funding application, and they've come back overnight actually and said that they've read through and are satisfied that the paper that we've put forward meets their criteria. So look forward to adopting this at today's meeting, filing by the 30th of September, having that signed off by DIA, and then launching into the program around Lincoln Town Centre upgrade initially, and the other 3 feasibilities. Happy to answer questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, David. Just really support this paper and the focus that it's got on many different things around our district. I acknowledge too there's a slight change in the funding levels for the projects compared to where we talked last time, and particularly around the cycleways piece, losing a bit of the space where we thought that was going to be. Not that the project itself changes, but that a lot of these spends, if needed, will come from the second Better Off funding package. So the ability for that to still go ahead sits there, but the Lincoln Town Centre really needed the extra funding at the moment. And well, we've talked endlessly around this table about how we'd like to get things done in Lincoln and move that forward. So it's really great to be able to see that have this level of support, as well as the health facility in Leaston, which is required, and the new item there around Runanga representation support, which I spoke to earlier. Murray.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Look, I'm really pleased to see that we've arrived at this. There was some in-depth discussion to get to where we've got to, and it's fantastic. I just think of the last 3 items there, in my head, is essentially a placeholder sums. And if we, it's not a target to spend up to that level. And I would assume, and this is my question, I would assume that if there's unspent funds in there, it would go back to that Lincoln Town Centre. So that would be my expectation.
It does.
So, look, incoming council will discuss what those relationships mean, beg your pardon, with how and how they will develop. So far be it for me to have a commentary around that, other than to say I will be back as part of the Leaston Health Facility and hopefully interact with you. So thank you.
No. I'm just not sure how to react to that last comment.
Not lecture.
Interact. Thank you for that reassurance, Mr. Lemon. I'm delighted with this spread of funding. I think it covers a lot of bases that need to be covered very well. I'm delighted for Lincoln. I'm delighted for the township of Lincoln. It's been a long time coming to get some runs on the board. They've been shunted back. And any time that I raise my head on the main street, I get the question, when are we going to do something here? The money is all going somewhere else. So with that, I support this package, and I would like to move the recommendation.
Yeah, I totally support this, and I also think the Lincoln Town Centre upgrade is definitely a good project for us to be doing. It has been raised with us a number of times. It is a safety issue, particularly for cyclists. That is a really good corridor that is used for people cycling between the university and Lincoln and elsewhere. So it's really important that this goes ahead for our climate change goals, if we're looking in that regard. And on that note as well, when we're looking at the end of the report and we're talking about the climate change considerations, it does mention the Lincoln Town Centre upgrade. I'm talking about the mode choice, and low emissions, which is totally correct. But we could also say that about the Mountains to the Sea and Te Waihura cycleways as well. It's a feasibility study. It's not actually going in at the moment, and will be interesting to see where that sits and going forward with that. But there's also potentially mode shift options from that as well. Depending on where the routes go, with the advent of e-bikes, it is quite feasible to have some of that as commuter cycling as well. So looking at the bigger picture. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm very pleased to see the Lincoln Town Centre upgrade stage 1 actually starting. I just have a query, and it's around DCs of $1.2 million that we have for this project. Do we still have, when we collect our development contributions, a requirement to actually spend those funds within 5 years of being collected for a particular project? Just want clarification around that. It's 10 years, is it? Yeah. Okay, so I can assume then that the $1.2 million of DCs is soundly locked in to be able to be spent on this project.
Can you just repeat that, Deborah?
Oh, sorry. If we collect DCs, development contributions, and they've got to be spent within 10 years of them being collected on a specified project for which we collected them. I'm just trying to clarify that the $1.2 million that we're actually holding in DCs has been collected in that past 10 years and can be used for this project.
Not necessarily fully collected, but they have been assigned into the DC account. But yes, they will be able to be spent on that. And with the funding that we're receiving, it becomes prorated the amount of how that matched the funding received. So same, so the ratepayer and the developer both receive partial benefit of that DC, out of the funding that we're receiving from the government.
Okay. No, I just wanted to clarify and make sure that we weren't going to be losing out on that funding due to a timing issue.
Thanks, Deborah. Shane.
Kia ora, thank you. I mentioned it last time we had a workshop looking at the transitional funding, and just for context, the transitional funding assumes that the transition of people's asset is complete, and that we receive this money in the transition of that asset, which is for context. So having accepted that, I'm wanting to understand, it's got here the timeline. The last meeting we had was mentioned that there wasn't a defined timeline, so has that changed? Spent within 5 years, okay. And secondly, just around the project prioritisation, if I assume that as a councillor, a governor, our duty is to be prudent stewards of ratepayer asset and dollar. I think the most tangible way we can define that is through asset, like Lincoln Town Centre, and as Malky's currently said, it's been a long time coming, so that's something that our ratepayers can actually see, touch, feel and use. And also health facilities, absolutely. That's an intergenerational asset that has wide-ranging benefits for our community forever. We currently have the cycleway feasibility study that has been put in, but we have a brunch on or a session around the cycleway feasibility, and part of the discussions that I've had with the community, spoken with some landowners or farm owners that lived on their unsealed property for 40 years. Their rates continue to go up, and it's been mentioned around here before. The point that I'm getting to is that the operational expenditure of a cycleway, has been discussed around this table before, is continued, and a continued large expense. We currently have a number of roads within our district that aren't maintained to what the ratepayers see as a acceptable level, and if we were to use transitional money, I think it would be better spent on fixing our roads, to be honest. The ruling representation, actually, I had been aware that this was inserted into there. So I'm not too sure what the process is around it. But as Mark has asked the question already, I believe that Runanga representation is absolutely necessary and respect both the Runanga to be a part of that. Is it the responsibility of ratepayers or the transitional funding? And to be honest, there is no free money, so we get that right. Projects such as this, I believe, should be better messaged through the ratepayers. And I think because we've got 5 years, I think we should actually put this through our annual plan so that our ratepayers actually have an opportunity to contribute to the projects going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Deadline is 2 days away, so there's no time to
And
put
we've had a
this through
number
the
of
annual plan.
workshops on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
But,
They're all in the long-term plan.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sophie.
I was just going to say, I think these are great projects. We've discussed it over several times. Lincoln Town Centre, going to be fantastic, particularly as a university town. Would be very useful as part of hopefully encouraging more university students to actually live there rather than in Riccarton and adding to carbon emissions in the district by moving, travelling in and out all the time. Cycleway feasibility, yes, it links up our communities if it goes ahead, but also fantastic tourism asset for that ginormous city that we have sitting to our east, and any visitors that come by from there. Leaston, it'll be fantastic for Ellesmere when something like that is up and running again, and hopefully a good sort of model that could be used elsewhere in the district and regionally and nationally, to be honest, because that definitely fits the community resilience. For a lot of fair farmer, and that's something better that will be and I guess the only other I had listed there was I appreciate about rights and want to fit, but I don't believe that fits the criteria of the spectrum funding. But that's probably something more that David also needed out there. If I looked at the criteria, I don't think that would have flown with DIA anyway. Thanks.
No, that's true. And I probably should have mentioned about the funds that Ngāi Tahu holds and the continued role for new investment and partnership funding around things. And the funds that Ngāi Tahu received as a part of their settlement were to resolve historic grievances and to go some way to try and bring some healing into what had happened in the past, and weren't there to fund continued engagement from that point forward. And so for that engagement to occur, that's where this new funding is required, and whether it comes through grants, or whether it comes through a rate, or whether it comes through any other means, it's about new funding into the system rather than the settlement money, which was about past things. Yeah, but we probably all learn a bit on that, and so thinking about how we bring that into for the new council. I know that both Ngāi Tahu and Taumutu are keen to work with us on what that induction looks like, and thinking about what going to Waitangi would mean as well for this group. Nicole.
There was just a comment mentioned about roads, cost of roads versus cost of cycleways and operational upkeep of those. Cycleways are cheaper than roads, and the upkeep of them leaves less pressure on them, but it would be interesting to actually have proper figures of that, so maybe that needs to go out to our community as well, because we need to look at the bigger picture going forward. As I said, the climate change is an issue, and these are wins that we can make is by having this simple mode shift from being in cars to being on bikes. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. There was a mover. Yeah, but I don't think we had a seconder. Sophie, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Declare it carried. Good job. Water race closures, tab 11, page 100. Sorry, page 64, are we? 65. Moved Murray Lemon, seconded Grant Miller. Any questions that people have of this report? Oh, Jeff does, yes.
It's not really a question, just asking. I think 2 meetings ago we had a bit of a discussion, and Isaac's had their solicitor here, and there's a bit of a contentious issue on that. It's just 80%, and I see in option 6, you've got race closure with agreement of 80% affected landowners, ratepayers on the race or directly, and the query was, seems to me to have been 80% as a percentage that seems to me to have been used as a reason to support either a closure or a non-closure of the water race. Yet I'm hearing that 80% is not a definitive waypoint to make, and that's what I commented on at the meeting of the 24th of August. And it was a general feeling of this meeting that we should find out if we do have anything in our statutes about that 80%. And I was hoping it might have been brought up at last meeting, but it wasn't. And I'm wondering where we've got with that.
Yeah, so we probably haven't looked at our closure policy or anything since the last meeting. The 80% is the threshold to commence the public consultation phase, and as we discussed at the last meeting, that once that public consultation phase, if the support changes, we're obliged to carry on with the process. I can confirm all these closures in this report had met the 80% threshold prior to the public consultation phase starting.
But where does that figure, 80%, come from, and where is it that we can refer to?
Yeah, right, so that's in the water race closure policy W107, and the 80% is about affected landowners, which is judged as properties that are either have a water race or directly adjacent to a water race.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Sophie.
Yeah, thanks. My query was in 4.2, it mentions that there's new information available from public consultation or post-public relating to Selwyn Road and East Madison's one. Is there any, that's why the idea is there anything you can share about what that sort of information that is? It's not mentioned.
It was a little bit of a conflicting information between the application and then the zoned development and consent for the developments in that area, and whether the race was needed for other purposes to be incorporated with the development or not. And so, yeah, we need to spend more time to actually work out what the implications are and make sure a report here isn't conflicting other reports.
Okay, so is that anything to do with like how, I guess I'm wondering whether, like, is anyone planning to potentially use the water race a bit like in Stonebrook as an amenity type thing, as opposed to just closing it and paving over the top or something?
Yeah, correct, that's exactly the use of it.
Thanks, Sophie. Murray.
Just casting my mind back 4 years, the 80% was what we consulted on the 2018-28 long-term plan as part of a recommendation from the then Water Race Committee. I think, if I remember correctly, that prior to that a closure required 100%, and it was a modification to that down to the 80 to enable some of these things to happen because of the frustrations landowners had brought to us and actually submitted on in that LTP. Correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, but a council initiated one has a lower threshold. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. I can't remember exactly.
No, I can't either, sorry, but I'm pretty sure it's a lower threshold. So that was fully consulted on in that LTP and was passed by this council. And it's good to see that it's in our policy, that's a good process.
Thanks, Daniel. And this is possibly your last meeting, well, is your last meeting with us. So I want to say thank you for all the work you've done for Selwyn District, managing our water races, a whole lot of flooding issues that have been happening in your time here on council, working with some of the really hard asset stuff that needs to be put in the ground, and dealing with all sorts of people right across our district, in our towns and our farms, in a mountainous alpine environment, and recently down on the coast, and thinking about the inundation at Taumotu. You've been a real asset to our council, and just want to say thank you on behalf of the community for the work you've given us, and wish you all the best in at ECAN. And that role sounds like it's got a whole lot of crossover to what you're doing here. So we'll no doubt continue to see your face around, but we'll just give a round of applause for Daniel. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you all councillors for your support and that over the years, and yeah, all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a mover and seconder? No. Murray? Moved. And Sophie, second. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carries. Tab 12 is on page 87. It's a transport update. Graham, thanks for joining us today. And I'll hand the floor to you to talk us through any highlights in your report.
Thank you. Good afternoon all.
Just a point of order, I think I'd already seconded that motion, previous motion.
You had. Sorry, Grant, thank you.
And while I have the floor, it disturbs me that we start talking about amenity in relation to these races, because they are the stock water, not amenity.
Graham.
Thank you. Speed management, safe speeds around school with the agency's Road to Zero strategy. We're required to set safe speed limits around schools by the end of 2027, with 40% complete by June 2024. This means that we will have to, we've done an estimate on the cost required to carry out this work. It comes out for our 32 schools, 31 sites, comes out at 1.2 million. If this is funded by the agency at the usual 5149 FAR, council will need to come up with a maximum of $588,000, possibly this financial year, dependent on what the agency provides us with. Roading maintenance and renewals, teams are ramping up for summer. Resurfacing and pavement rehabilitation, getting ready for that. Low cost, low risk projects. Whedon's Ross Road seal widening is now complete. Dawes Road, Leaston Road intersection safety upgrade is pending property purchase. School frontage upgrades, sites have been prioritised and will be going out to tender this calendar year. Markham Way traffic calming, project's been designed, it was surveyed, designed, and is currently under safety audit, and will go out to tender this calendar year. Springston Rolleston Road upgrade stage 2, same as Markham, and will go out to tender this calendar year. Waimakariri Gorge roadside safety barrier installation, in discussion with the agency and trying to get that installed as part of a pavement rehabilitation which is programmed this financial year. And then the Railway Road industrial access upgrade is all complete and ready to go out to tender and will go out this calendar year. Low cost, low risk projects 23-24 are progressing as detailed. Perryman's Road seal extension, waiting for an investigation and feedback from the agency regarding the State Highway 75 intersection options, and we'll go on from there. That's pretty much it, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Graham. On the funding for the speed management signage, that's likely then to be an annual plan matter for next year. Yeah,
it's just that the agency has set that limit of completing the 40%. Yes, within this 3-year funding block. So that's the issue there.
We have Mark.
Thank you. A number of questions. I also had a question regarding the speed management signage around schools. Is that intended to be electronic signage that's 30k, essentially why schools are in operation rather than 24/7?
It varies. So it can be electronic, it can be static, permanent. It's dependent on the existing speed around the schools.
So in a urban environment where it's currently 50k, is it likely to be 30k permanently or 30k on a managed basis?
Varies. Yeah.
And will there be, okay, so I guess my follow-up question is, will there be consultation on that variability? Because there are some places
Yes.
where I could understand 30k permanently, as we've just done in Tennyson Street, makes sense. Other places, 30k may be difficult to enforce at 2 o'clock in the morning on a road where there's no other traffic, and it suddenly says 30k school.
Yeah. Yes, so it will go out to consultation in our interim speed management plan.
Okay. Second of which, 5.3 temporary road closures, the Silver Ferns rally. I'm a sports club user that uses that piece of Malvern Hills Road on a Saturday afternoon to get to my sports event. What obligation is there on the rally to enable existing users to get to their destination on that day?
Well, the organisation has had to discuss with road users. So
There's been no consultation with our club about any road closure on that day. Our club meets on a Saturday afternoon from October through to May on just off Malvern Hills Road between Auchenflower and Waimakariri roads, which is included here. There has been no consultation as to enabling access for our club day.
Okay.
I can talk to you give you details
Follow
later.
that up after the
that'd be
meeting,
great.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just in general because you've been assured there's been consultation. I can assure you there hasn't. Thank you.
Yeah, Kerwi Tavern, the discussions we had on the footpath, have you had dealings with Wakatahi yet?
Yes, so I've met out there. They're quite happy to put a barrier curb along that existing concrete channel. Yeah.
And they're happy with the entry where it is? Did that come up at all?
It did come up and they were surprised about that. We checked with the planners and they have been consulted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have two queries. One is on Gorge Road between Ellesmere Junction Road and Leaston Road. There's an underpass there that is flowing across the road on a regular basis. And it's now degraded down to potholes and you'll notice that it's really quite unsafe. If someone comes around that bend, they can easily just end up in a very dangerous situation. There are flooding signs up there, but they've been up there for some considerable time. Do you know what the time frame or the road maintenance or whose responsibility it is to actually put that corner into an area where we're not going to have a serious accident?
Yes, so that matter's been referred to the compliance team and I'll follow up with them.
Thank you. And the other one, and Grant's probably going to deal with this too, is Perryman's Road. Have you got any time frame with regards to that sealing? Because it's the same with all of our road maintenance. I heard as of yesterday, I think bitumen may have gone up 10%, being imported into New Zealand, which is going to impact on all of our roading projects. So I just wonder whether we've got enough contingencies in our budgets to deal with these increases.
Yeah, well, that's funded outside of the maintenance funding.
Okay. So that one's okay, Perryman's Road. No, sorry.
Yeah, that job is being funded outside of maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Three things. The 32 schools, that number will be reduced because the number of schools have already had their speed limits reduced, haven't they? And they're actually been signage as appropriate already?
No.
Oh, well, Tairapu School has just got it done.
Yes, only the state highway, not on the council
So it's
roads.
31 now, not 32 at least anyway.
Sorry?
So it's 31 schools, not 32 at least.
32 schools, 31 sites, because there's 2 schools in Farringdon on the same site. But Taitap School, we still have to do the council roads outside of the local roads outside of the state highway.
Yeah, thank you. Second one, Deborah's right, Perryman's Road. It seems not quite sure why we're spending so much time with NZTA. The intersection already exists. It has been for the last 60 years, so nothing's changed. All we're doing is putting a coat of seal on. So I'm sort of a bit concerned that we're spending too much time with NZTA, which leads me to my next point, and I would ask the CEO to consider this, whether it's appropriate we write to NZTA. As the local councillor on State Highway 75, I have had significant feedback that the speed reductions are not wanted, are not working, and are just adding frustration and danger to the highway rather than actually improving safety. We're now seeing what you would classify as vehicle trains. Before, when someone was doing 90, you might have 3 or 4 cars behind. We're now seeing people doing 75, 76 and 10, 14, 15 cars and a big train behind them. Just recently, last weekend, there was 3 accidents on State Highway 75, so clearly the 80 Ks hasn't helped safety. One ran into a bridge barrier, one ran off the road, 2 ran off the road. So significant, they might pitch it as it's readjustment to the new limits, but we're not seeing that. And I think, just referring to when Mark Chamberlain was here, he often referred to putting a speed limit in place must make sense to the driver. The speed limit that Waka Kotahi has put in does not make sense to the users of that road. You've got a very large scale rural road with no friction on it. People are just getting frustrated. And what's happening now, as we predicted, is people are turning off at Motukarara and using the council secondary roads because they're so frustrated with the state highway being the wrong speed limit. NZTA's response might be, let's lower the council road speed limits, which is not what they asked for. And the very strong feedback I'm getting, and I hope the CE might include this in his letter, or the mayor, whoever writes it, is that what they asked for was speed reductions in Little River, and they're quite happy with the speed reductions on the peninsula because you can't drive faster than 60 k's on most of the hill. But the road from Little River to Horswell is an arterial commuter road. What the communities wanted was slow vehicle bays or passing lanes where appropriate, not a proliferation of slowing down signs, which has just created frustration, immense frustration in the community. And if ever there was a time that NZTA wanted to respond to community responses now, but I suspect they want to leave it in place for however long until the community stops talking about it. But very, very strong frustration in the community, and safety is not being enhanced, it's actually being reduced. So is it appropriate that the CE or Mayor would respond in that way or provide feedback to NZTA on the implementation, because it's clearly not working?
As well as that, Grant will be looking in, well, the new council no doubt will have James and the rest of the Waka Kotahi team and to talk about a range of state highway issues, and so for that to be fronted by them as well as just through a letter.
I think it ties into the council submission into Waka Kotahi about maintaining arterial routes from Selwyn into the city, and without that one and Shands Road and Springs Road being maintained at good arterial speeds, we have a real problem on our hands and a high degree of frustration at the community.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and thanks for that, Grant. Thank you, Graham, for your report and also accessibility to the community. I do really appreciate that. Have you had any feedback around the signage being bilingual at all? I see there's a number of reports out there about bilingual signage. That's my first question. Our second one, just under the low cost, low risk projects 5.6.2. When Mark Chamberlain left, I raised it with you, perhaps yourself at the point in time, but at least in High Street Lake Road intersection there, that was identified through a report that it was a high risk area, and that under the low risk, low cost, some new line marking would be put in to brighten it up, freshen it up and make it a bit safer. A number of the pedestrians have encountered some close calls and still continue to. Just lastly, there was some signage left out over the weekend, long weekend at Urbal, and there was some confusion from traffic because I followed it. It went slowed down to 50 and then back up to 100 out of the intersection. Fortunately, there was an accident there on the weekend, but it didn't seem to be well monitored. One of the signs had actually fallen over, and people, looking up in the distance, they were not doing 50 and they're slowing down at all. So I wonder if it is a compliance issue and if you got some feedback around that at some point. Not expecting it right now. Thank you.
Regarding the Barlinger signs, no feedback, and also Irwell, if you can send me some more details, I can follow up on that. Regarding the Leaston Road intersection, there are issues with those pedestrian crossings being so close. There is also a sewer upgrade which is going to tie into the manhole in the middle of the intersection. Once that's done, then we can liven up the intersection and make it better.
Appreciate that. Is it possible for you to send it through to the community committee, the Leaston Community Committee? Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Mark?
I was actually going to say, and there is a compliment to Graham that's not in his report. Graham has offered with the road safety team to meet some Rollston residents to discuss their traffic safety concerns on Duns Crossing Road. So thank you, Graham, from the Rollston Residents Association for being willing to meet with them and have an on-site meeting to discuss those issues. They will be in touch with you in due course. So thank you very much.
No problem. Good stuff.
Thank you, Sophie.
Yeah, mine's just a quick message for the road safety team. Thank you for the cycle skills things up and running. So I think that's been talked about since before I came on council, and it's really good to see it actually happening. And that's a really good opportunity to get more kids cycling around their various townships and towns through the different schools rather than being dependent on their parents to get them around. It's good for the environment, good for kids' independence. Thank you.
Yeah, general feedback on the R-Bike program has been really positive, so that's great.
Do we have a mover and seconder for this report? Mark and Jenny, thank you. No further comments or questions. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Declare it carries. Thanks, Graham. Next we have consent to grant an easement to Orion, page 95. Moved Malcolm, seconded Shane. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Property report, council property matters, Murray Washington, page 107, tab 14 of today's agenda. Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just starting to get my head around all the issues. So I've got Rob alongside me in case there's something you want to ask. We'll either be able to try to answer it or we'll take it away and try to answer it. I just wanted to make clear, like obviously now we're into spring, the weather's actually starting to pick up and we're starting to see good progress on both the Rolleston Town Centre and the Kakaha Park in Prebbleton. And just note, one of the key issues that we've actually identified in here is around the Selwyn huts, is basically to just give them indication that the current leases will continue through to June 24, by which stage we will have a lot more clarity over the certainty around leases and licenses and what we're doing with the wastewater upgrade. So we were getting people coming, they were being effectively extended month by month after discussions. It's actually relatively safe. It's more clarity if we take it through to June 24. And by that stage, we'll have clear direction where the future lies. So we're not signalling at this stage the length of the lease or what type of lease will be post 24. But there's a lot of obviously climate change and flood events and a whole lot of other things come into play. So that's all we need to, I would say, at this stage, and take any questions or any queries.
Thank you, Mark.
My questions around the town centre are around Christensen Parade as to when that piece of road's actually going to be opened and the second of which is a request that if it's not open, there's currently a chain across it at the community centre end. That chain is very difficult to actually see, particularly at night. It needs a road closed sign either hanging off it or next to it, because somebody's going to end up driving into it thinking the road is open. There's a pedestrian access, and it appears that pedestrians can use that piece of road, but it is still closed for vehicle access. So I'm just wondering when that might be actually open.
I'll follow that through. I understand the construction's been completed and we're just awaiting a car park. So we'll follow through on that, and particularly if there's an issue of public safety.
Thanks, and just a reminder to all of us, if we notice things that are dangerous, don't wait for a council meeting to bring it up.
Well, this was
Get in
a
touch with
particular
staff.
piece I noticed last night, Sam, so I haven't had a chance to email it through to staff.
Cool.
It was just a useful opportunity today.
Sophie?
Yeah, I can talk to you about that because, anyway, lots of people are using it and nobody's had an accident yet. But yeah, my question was more around Mead Hall, and I know that's not my area, but just looking at the information on there, is this likely to stay within, but sorry, that's page 112. Is it likely to stay within budget? Because if not, do we need to, or, the next council need to worry about?
It's a $99 question, isn't it? Will it stay in the budget?
It's a very loaded question there.
I will take that back and ask that question of the project manager. Will it stay in budget?
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. Grant?
Two issues. I'm pleased that you brought the Sell and Huts licences back to the council again. I suppose I am concerned. I have registered my concern that people are buying these licences without understanding that there is potential for significant change in the licence and the terms which might occur. We're hoping to make it as transparent and as logical for those licence holders as possible, but there is a significant risk there, I would say to those people, and as long as they understand that there is a risk in taking up those new licences or transferring the licences, that there could be significant change, I think that's important. The second thing is what initially started out as an innocuous sort of health and safety issue at Horrorada Domain around the jumps sort of become quite a big issue. And I notice it says in there that this is the last report to the council. Are you able to give me some assurance that course is going to be reconstituted?
Well, it's been inspected by national people qualified to do these things in conjunction with representatives from Go Horrorada on site. It's identified that the work was undertaken on our reserve, so it's our problem. We're going to basically, the fix isn't as big as initially indicated in terms of the cost. We'll fix it, then we'll be able to be opened. So,
is there sort of an indicative timeline for that as yet, or not really?
Look, I haven't got one, but I can find that out.
Yeah. It's surprising, as you say, some of the small things really affect our communities, and I've had a significant amount of people that have rung me and said that they did use it on a regular basis, and it was used by not just the local Horrorada community, but the wider community who travelled there for that exact reason, to use that training facility. So I guess if we can be able to resurrect it and get it going, that'd be a really good outcome.
Yep.
Yeah, I did have two further questions, and Councillor Miller has just asked the one that I was going to ask as to who was doing the work at Horrorada, which you've just answered, so thank you. The second of which is I've got an update for you. I was talking to Cameron Moore last night on the Reed's Pit issue, because there was the meeting of the Ross and Residents Association last night, and the update from Cameron yesterday was that the workmen and the workers are taking their equipment out of the pit as we speak, and that subject to getting mowed and a little bit of tidy up, the pit should be open within a couple of weeks for a soft opening for the community. Of some concern was the fact that it ended up being a stormwater overflow in the heavy rain event, and that there is still some water at the bottom of the pit. And that might be subject to further discussion at council as to stormwater, resolving the stormwater issues in that area. I mean, it may be that the pit is an appropriate stormwater overflow basin, but that's not quite what it was intended for, and that may be an ongoing issue.
It may be, and all I'll say, it is the lowest point in the surrounding area, so water tends to go that way, and trying to keep water out of it might be more problematic than dealing with the water once it's in it. So,
Just inflate it, make it convex, not concave.
Thank you, Murray and Rob, for that report. Just also an update, the MOU with Horata has been signed and met on site this morning with two local councillors and representatives of the Horata Community Trust. So it's basically a 5-year process from here to ensure that things have begun on site. It's going to take about 12 months, or may take up to 12 months, to get the transfer of some of the memorial status off the land, and then a 4-year period after that to make sure the plans are supported, funded, and building consent has commenced within that time frame. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing that continue, and great that again come to the end of the triennium, just something else ticked off by this council, so well done. Mover and seconder, Jeff and Murray, going to move and second that? Okay. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Declare it carried. Thank you. We now move to an opportunity for people to give some valedictory or just some reflection on the time of this triennium. We'll finish with Jeff, Mark and Murray. So I'll offer the opportunity around the room, and then we'll have Jeff, Mark and Murray to conclude. Malcolm, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you all for the collegial way in which we've worked in the last 3 years. It's been a pleasure to be around the table with you all. Sometimes there's been a little bit of displeasure, but you get that in politics. Yeah, I'd like to thank you all for the way in which we've conducted ourselves. When I have had to chair on behalf of Sam, it has not been a Herculean task. We do work very well together, and long may that continue for any of us who are around in the next term. And I'd like to thank you, Murray, for your input. Your good humour will be missed across the table at times. And I hope we do still hear from you as well. And same with Mark and Jeff, of course. You all will be missed. You have been part of the fabric of this table for some time. So it'll take some time, providing I am returned, to get to know the new personnel as we've got. So thank you very much.
Nice. Yeah, tēnā rā tātou e te rangatira mā. Murray, Jeff, Mark, I would like to wish you a happy retirement. With whatever you choose to do with your time, I'm positive that you will continue to serve our community as you have up to this point, or for many years before that. Personally, I've learned a hell of a lot over this term that I wouldn't have been able to gain anywhere else. So I'm very, very appreciative of that fact. And while you're moving on, I'm sure you continue to contribute. I actually wrote a speech for the least, and I didn't get to say it there, but I'll just say it now. I'd like to wish happy retirement to Councillor Mark Alexander and thank him for his tenacity and bravery. Councillor Jeff Bland for his sage advice, wisdom and integrity and decision making. And finally, Councillor Murray Lemon, who always worked in the best interest of his community and his home of Ellesmere. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. I think you've virtually covered everything for the rest of us. So I'm waiting forward to listening to the valedictory speeches of those that are leaving. But just like to reiterate that good luck to all of us who are restanding, and just like to give a special thank you to staff for the length of time that many of us have been here and the staff have been here. I didn't know that Daniel was actually leaving, so it came as a bit of a surprise. And you see staff members leave and you see councillors leave, and at the end of the day, you know, you just hope that the values that we've all picked up and had installed in us from being around this table actually continue with us out in our private lives or wherever we choose to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I'd just like to thank Mark, Jeff and Murray for the support that you've given me as a first-time councillor, and I wish you all the best in what you choose to do with your time. but I'd also like to thank the rest of the councillors, Sam, David and staff, for the support that you have given me over the last 3 years. Thank you.
We'll talk first to the retiring councillors, because no matter who gets elected, we are losing a wealth of experience with those 3 councillors leaving the council. And, you know, I think, Mark, you're one of the most best prepared councillors around the table. You always read your agenda. You're all over the detail. You raise the uncomfortable detail, which I think is a really important job at the council table. And in the absence of Mark, we're all going to have to step into that space and raise those uncomfortable details, because it's a task that no one wants to do, but is absolutely imperative for us. And Jeff, you know, you've been the master of understatement. You're always, but when you do talk, you know, it's always very well considered and has a very strong point to it. One of the phrases I always keep in my diary, and I always think about that you said to us, but what did the other guy say? Which I think that's important to remember at the council table, is that we often get a passionate person at the front of the table giving their point of view, but Jeff's sage advice, well, what did the other guy say, is important to remember, because the other guy has a point of view as well. And I think that's really important, and Jeff will miss you around the table. Thank you. The biodiversity prince at the far end of the table. Is the last non-member of the Ellesmere Mafia, as I understand it. So the poor old Ellesmere Mafia is now in recess, which is a bit of a shame for Ellesmere, but Shane will be, and his new cohort will be doing their best to hold up Ellesmere's end. But I know you've had a lot of highlights in your career, Murray, and I was thinking about them this morning, but I'm absolutely sure that the highlight of your career was the microchipping of cats with Bob and I that we did. And it was some big important discussions there, Murray, wasn't it? And you know, really strategic discussions about the future of council, all those sort of things which went into it. And you know, we couldn't have changed the course of this council without that subcommittee hearing. So I think that was really important. But all 3 of you have contributed in your own way, and I think the council will be in debt for the effort you've put in. So thank you for what you've done.
Yeah, so thinking about today, I realised that the whole time that I've lived in Selwyn, which is closing on a decade now, Jeff and Mark have been either on council or on community board. And I probably didn't realise that when I first moved here or anything. I didn't know you, I hadn't met you. But I really appreciate it as a resident in this area now that the ward is, changing in general. So thank you very much for all of that. And Murray, I'm going to miss random conversations over lunch and pointing out points of view that I've never thought. And I like that. So yeah, going to miss that. And just generally, this has been some of the strangest 3 years of my life between the various things that you cover, and it's a much broader job than you ever realise. Note for you guys in the back there, there's a lot that you cover here. And staff are awesome. They put up with us asking strange questions that they thought they'd already answered, or pointing out things that, may not have been considered, or vice versa. So, yeah, keep on keeping us on our toes. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks to the 3 of you, but I think to all councillors, I think we've been really lucky to have a council that we've actually become friends. And I think that's made a huge, huge difference the way this works. We can sit here, we can disagree, and we can walk out and have a cup of tea, and we're all as happy as we stand by. But one of the things I was going to suggest, if you come back in and sit in the chairs in the back here, you can slip me a piece of paper and I can put stuff forward for you.
So, there's not really much left for me to say after being at the end of that, but thanks to Jeff and Mark, fellow Selwyn Central councillors, and thank you for your sage advice at times, and obviously your help in the community and with our various committees and everything. And Murray, so potentially if This is actually quite a sad time. Murray was part of the 2016 crowd. Craig left last term and now it's Murray, and I guess Bob and I will see if what happens at this upcoming election. But it's it's very sad, and hopefully, we've got to keep in touch. But it's I'm looking forward. I'm going to miss. Touch wood, I get back on myself, but just council is not going to be the same without you. You've got just your different way of looking at things at times, and so I've really appreciated that, and to keep in touch. And I'm sorry, and I should say thank you to the staff and everything. I mean, really, we can't do our roles without, and just the openness that we get, the free to talk about things, and can just go up to any of them and have a yarn. And it's just like everyone at the council, and it's really has been very good place to be working, and it is fun, and we have had fun. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate the comments, Mr Mayor, that I made before. The enduring memories of the last 3 years are firstly the relationships that have developed between elected members, management and staff, and that has allowed us to be a very, very strong, good performing organisation. And secondly, the huge number of activities and projects that we have advanced, acknowledging the fast rate of growth that we've got across the district. So I just again want to thank you all very much for everything and the relationships that we've had and the work that's been done.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed serving with you all over the last 3 years and longer, but thinking on this last triennium, we've achieved a whole lot for our community, and it's been because of the trust that we have within this group for one another to be able to pursue the bits that are important to each of us, and where we can connect with staff, as has been said, to actually mean that the whole organisation hums to get things done. And so I just want to say thank you for what you've each contributed into that, because it would only take one or two members where that isn't true, and the whole thing starts to slow down and anchors going. So big up to you all. I want to say to Jeff, and I'll start with you, Jeff. We got on council at the same time, and back in 2010, elected straight after the September earthquake. We were in this building again the day of the Christchurch earthquake, and have seen a whole lot of change in the time since then. I still remember these lights above swaying, and then seeing reports of the cathedral spire being down. And so when we think about the change that our district has gone through and the work that you've done to oversee and govern through that time of change, I really want to honour that. And I think back to one of the first big decisions we made, we got on to this council, and a $25 million budget, which to me, $25 million is a massive amount of money when you first get on council, and you think that's a huge project. How on earth did any council decide to spend $25 million on something? And then realise actually that $25 million was only half what was required, and the report that you get within a few months of being on council is we actually under budgeted that, and it needs to be 50 million, and that 50 million is going to need a decision really soon. And there were 5 of us on council at that time, and they're leaning on one another, but particularly on the experienced councillors around the table at that time, to be able to say, well, we're going to have to rely on the advice given by staff and the direction given by existing councillors to ensure that the Eastern Selwyn Sewage Scheme went ahead, which has led to all of the growth that we've been able to contribute to our community. So yeah, just thinking back on those times right at the very beginning, it's been great to journey with you, and I've got a gift for you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I thought, I recall that quite clearly, and the nervousness that I felt, because probably the most money I'd ever had in my life was about $20, because Julie keeps the rest, and it was, I thought $85 million, not 25 and 50. Yeah. But, you know, I don't even know how to spell valedictory, let alone make a valedictory speech. It wasn't something that I intended doing. I recall when I was quite young, I read a book, and it was about Scott's mission to the South Pole, and one of the people that were with him was a guy called Oates, Titus Oates. And Titus was a bit like me, I think. He wasn't a great one for emotion, and he hated probably saying goodbyes. And when I take Julie or anyone else to the airport, I drop them at the gate and take off. And he wrote a note, which is a very courageous note, and from memory it read, I'm just going outside, I may be gone some time. And that was kind of the way I was going to leave this place. And I was just, if I was going to do a speech, I probably would have spent a little bit of time on it, but it was my intention really just to do what Titus did, realise that my time was up, and in my own heart realised my time was up and it was time to go, and it is time for me to go. And it's really important for a councillor to realise it's just time to go too, because like a pool, if the water just stays in it, it stays stagnant. And I think new and fresh outlooks and personalities, as long as they are for the good of Selwyn and good of the district that they represent, is healthy for any council. So if I was to write a note, and this is how it would read. Well, for me today is the end of another chapter in my life, in the book of my life. A rather pleasant one, I must say, made possible by the good people of Selwyn Central who voted me in as their councillor all those years ago. To the people of Selwyn, I thank you very much. Your faith in me has been repaid, I'm sure. To the staff here, each and every one of you, past and present, you have all been very kind to me, very helpful, and I thank you as well. To my fellow councillors, good luck with the elections. I wish you all the best. To my friends, Mark and Murray, well done. You have both served your communities, I believe, with distinction. I always recall, now this is not quite to do with the council, but it's something that I've reflected on in my life, and it's another quote that maybe you, Grant, would like to write down. I always recall when I was a young man, my first day at the police training college, we were met by the camp commandant, and that's how he was called in those days, the superintendent, at our very first class, and he a very tall guy, chain smoker, I remember him well, quite a good speaker, and he said, gentlemen, he said, welcome to a ringside seat for the greatest show on earth. He was so right. For 38 years as a cop and 15 years in local body politics, I've had the best seat in town. If there's anyone out there listening, I don't know if this is being televised, or anyone around the table, anyone knows someone that could help me write a book, I'd be very grateful if they could come to me, because I've got a couple of books in me. A lot of people have actually asked me, how do I feel about this being my last day on the council? And to be quite honest with you, I almost forgot that it was my last day. So I don't feel anything other than pleasure and a sense of satisfaction that I can look back on and say, well, you know, I've done what I could, and it was very nice to look around Rolleston and see what's happened over the last years with the help of the councillors and all the staff. It's not a one-man job, it's a community and team effort. So I have a great deal of satisfaction. I look around. Thanks to all of you for the help you've given me over the years, and certainly thanks for the nice, kind words that you have said about all of us, and I do appreciate that. But like Titus Oates, I really just want to slip out the door, leave a note, and that's me gone. I certainly don't at this stage intend coming back to pester you like some people have in the past. If you see me here, it'll be for another reason. And thanks very much.
Mark, you and I got on council at the same time as Jeff, and so that same history is true. I look back at that big decision though, and you were a big advocate that actually the district should fund any shortfall in the ESSS funding, and at the time council determined that Rolleston would take the risk on, and I look back and think that was a bad decision by us. And you've always been an advocate for Rollston, for its growth, and at that time it was growing really quickly. Little did we know how it was going to end up now. But I think over that time, the number of projects that you've really gotten behind and championed, and the aquatics, the large-scale park, the town centre, a number of things that you've really lent into, and that's kind of like the big-scale stuff. And as was mentioned earlier, so much of what you bring to a meeting is a thorough, in-depth reading and knowledge of the detail, and you do that whether it's an annual plan or a long-term plan, whether that's a hearing, whether it's a commissioner, or whether that's just a council meeting like today. You've put in a huge amount of effort, and so thank you for your contribution to us. Your taonga is, as Permitia was talking to me about it, connected to Kumara, and talking with Kumara being, if you can live somewhere with dirt that will grow food and you can stay there for 3 generations, then you become a part of that place. And I was just thinking about you and your wee piece of dirt, and your connection to owning being here. So I thought it was quite appropriate actually that this was for you.
Tēnā koutou, no engari o ku tupana, ko taua nā maunga nāna aho I whakaruahau, ko waka waikirikiri te awa ko Mark Alexander tōku ingawa. Hei kai konihera aho ki te konihera o waikirikiri no reira tēnā koutou katoa. I've started with my mihi because it's one of the things that I've learned while I've been on council. And it may be the last time that I'm able to give it, including the line about being a Selwyn District Councillor. It's been my pleasure and my joy to represent our community for the last 21 years. Selwyn's grown considerably over that time. There are so many to thank. My family, without whose support I would not have sought election. My wife has always been one of my nominees. Without her support, I would not have stood for election. Indeed, at the last election, I was nominated by both my wife and my son. That was a privilege. My family has accepted the loss of income and the time commitment to this role, and I am and always will be grateful to them for their support. Council staff, without you, this council would not function. You're often the targets of unfair and inappropriate criticism, and you're generally unable to respond. I hope I've done my bit to defend you from the unfair and unjust criticism. I value the relationship that we councillors have with council staff, and that makes us, staff and elected members, better off and better performing. I've always had a bouquets and brickbats policy. I'll say when things have done well and when they haven't, without fear or favour. I hope that it's never been taken personally and that it's been fair. Councillors, we've had our different points of view, different philosophies and different approaches. We've usually debated the issues, played the ball, not the person. I don't think there's anyone that I haven't agreed with at times and that I haven't disagreed with at other times. You've been great to work with, and together we've achieved a lot. Our community. There are many destructive members of our community, quick to criticise and condemn. There are more, generally less outspoken, who are supportive and understanding. Thank you to those who have supported us in word, action and deed. Deborah, as Grant mentioned, you've given me the biggest laugh at council when you talked about microwaving of cats. I sat next to you hissing, microchipping, but you continue to repeatedly discuss microwaving of cats. I continue to smile every time I think about microwaves, microchips or cats. That has to be one of the funniest moments at council. So thank you. It's nice to have that memory to look back on. It's not about me. I was challenged by a regional council candidate to list my achievements from the last 21 years as an elected member. I refused. As my time as elected member hasn't been about what I have achieved or the wins I've made or the things I've done. On my own, I would have achieved nothing. Without the support of council, staff, community and colleagues, I wouldn't have done much at all. Together, community, councillors, council staff, council contractors, we've achieved a lot. We've seen our communities grow. We've helped shape that growth. We've seen award-winning facilities, places and spaces built. It has been a pleasure to see council's relationship with mana whenua grow during this time. We are all better off as this relationship has grown and improved and matured. We have made a difference. We have had a positive influence in our community, our district, our region, our country. It was never about me. It's never been about me. It's about the team. Community and council working together for the benefit of all. It is about all of us working together for all of us. Knowing when to leave, when to step away, when to move on is important. After the last election, I recognised the signs myself that this time was approaching. I leave with few regrets, a few things unachieved, and a great many memories. Many great memories. Thank you for all your support, your kind words, and your patience and your humour. To those seeking re-election, I wish you the electoral success you deserve. Ask the staff if they could put my word. I'm going to leave the incoming council with a word for the next term. Be brave, bold, believable, beneficial. Be realistic, reasonable and robust. Be accountable, adventurous and authentic. Be visible, volunteer. Be enthusiastic, energetic and excited. May the new council be brave in the new term. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And Murray, you got on council when I first became the mayor, and so there's a bit of journeying together in that. I remember not knowing you at all, and the first couple of items that came up on council agenda, there was a Lakeland art contribution, I think $20,000 or something, and you stepped back from the table. You had a connection. Three connections, yeah. And then there was not long after that, a plan change in Rolleston, and you stepped back from the table. And I thought, man, how connected is this guy? It's like, even in this big and these small decisions, Murray's so connected into this place. You don't bring an ego, but you really look for the best outcome, and you gather people together in an honest and transparent way so that all voices can be heard. And you've done that particularly well. And when I think about the work that you did through our district plan review and in the biodiversity space, which is tricky, really want to honour and acknowledge that. I've got a few good memories, but I actually think last week, just travelling to Kuratawhiri together was special. And so thank you for what you've brought to this council. And your taonga has the head of a bird and the body of a man and the tail of a fish, and a bit of a connection to your biodiversity work, air, land and sea, and also the place where you live around Te Wahora. So thank you.
Wow. Feel a wee bit of a fraud here because I got the opportunity to do a valedictory last week for audit and risk, so I'm getting 2 bites of the cherry here. So I sort of broke this down. I thought about this a wee bit, and I thought there's three main things here. It's motivation, and then there's the highs and the lows, and the tributes at the end. So I think back 20 years ago, my very good friend Jeff Lill said to me, you'd be pretty good on Board of Trustees. Well, it's something I'd never thought of. Just Sparky's, oat milk. Yeah. So I stood, and I reflected on that, did the IRD course last year, and Juliet McKee, the facilitator, asked how many of us have been on boards of trustees, and it was about possibly a quarter, and she said, a very experienced governor now, said it was the hardest time of her governance career, and I certainly would reflect that. There is nothing around this table that's been harder than what I've dealt with at Board of Trustees. So I saw council as the next logical step. So I spoke to Pat and Nigel and sat in on meetings, like the two hopefuls, maybe more, that are sitting behind me, to get a bit of an idea of that. And I thought, I think this is something I could probably do. So I've never really had a political motivation. I don't have a party allegiance. In fact, I think back to possibly about 3, 4, 5 elections ago, there was a survey you could do, and it sort of gave you a pointer as to where you probably would vote. And I was very pleased to find out I was an egalitarian, and I think that to me summed it up. I don't want to be labelled, left wing, right wing, centre left, centre right. I think it is about the people. And on that note, a good friend of mine had another mutual friend, a friend of hers was there, and he said to me, what was the issue? What was the issue that I was standing for? And I thought, I'm not standing for an issue. This is actually about governance to me. And I think Geoffrey Palmer, whom I admire, not necessarily for his politics, but certainly for his approach to governance, said that government's role is to make and enact good law. And I think that is our role here. It is to make good decisions, good, meaningful decisions in law, and then enact them for the benefit of all of our community. So I saw this as a board role, essentially, and I always believed I was going to serve 2, maybe 3 terms. And as Jeff and Mark have said, when your time's there, and I've always known when to go, and now's the time to go, and you make yourself redundant, and someone will step into that role. So the lows, there's not a lot of them really, other than to say it's a very selfish role. And what I mean by that is it's really hard on your family and friends. So it's going to be nice to re-engage. Hopefully they want to see me again. There's some losses. There's loss of income, loss of hair, and loss of weight. I suppose that's a positive, but yeah. I've also lost my enjoyment for reading. 4, 5, 6, 800 pages. I mean, last LTP, what was that? 4,500 pages. Boy, if I read again, it'll be a long time. I guess it's being seen. You walk into a room and someone says, "Oh, Councillor Lemon." It's like, oh, your heart sinks. You think, oh, can't I just be Muzza Sparky and we just have a conversation? So I'm looking forward to that again. The frustrations of COVID and cheering via Zoom. Sam, you'll appreciate that. I don't think I've ever been so mentally exhausted as the first couple of meetings of that. The impact on us in this term, particularly and I'll go back to poorly written law, of poorly written or timed legislation. So we think of the frustrations that Three Waters has caused us. The NPS and productive soils, and we think of recent conversations around that in relation to housing intensification, if only they got them the other way around, and we could have had a proper debate about that and would have been guided. It's taken huge amounts of our focus away, and yet we've achieved all this. It's amazing. The other thing, and it was, and I promise I didn't write this after yesterday's news, but the rise of mis and disinformation and the hypocrisy of those wanting to take away the very democracy our forebears fought so hard for. And we look up here, here's our former Queen, 70 years of service, and think, how would she feel about that? Makes my 20 years pale into insignificance, but she was a little bit of resource than me as well. And the last thing, and I'll just note, is the being lectured to by former elected members. I will be back, but I won't be coming to lecture you, I can assure you. I do note also that it tends to be those who didn't choose to leave rather than the ones that did choose to leave. So I'm sure that'll be the case. The highs, and this is far more important really, the privilege of being in this position. It really is a privilege to enact real change and assist our community to thrive. Chairing audit and risk, taking over from Grant, which was, I said last week, that was a huge set of shoes to fill. We were always going to do things differently, and the audit and risk committee was different, and the needs were different. But I value the input that Grant had in those first 2 terms coming in. Chairing biodiversity working group, Sam, you're right. To keep that diverse group of people in a room, I think was really a moment for me to treasure, because and that was staff's input as much as mine, obviously, but to be able to keep such a diverse group together for 14 months when at national level they couldn't achieve that, I think was credit to the direction that we're going. And we formulate good policy, and I think we will end up with a good district plan out of that, I'm sure of it, in all chapters. Delivery key projects for this district, and that's just a given, isn't it? And I think particularly of district-wide rating, Mark, the comment that Sam made before, I think district-wide rating has been and will continue to be good for our whole district. And most importantly for me in this training anyway is the reticulation of Darfield and Kirwi sewage. I think it's the ESSS that for the rest of our district that you've spoken of, Sam, as a formulation. Tributes, the most important bit here. Firstly, to Mark and Jeff, you've mirrored a lot of my statements. You've both said you know when to go, and I've appreciated, as you say, you are friends, and I've appreciated your input. I've appreciated that we don't always agree, and that I'm not always right, and I'm sure you're well aware of that. Mark, I'm starting to agree with you far too often, as I've said. It is time to go. Fellow councillors, I do genuinely wish you the best for re-election, because I know your hearts are really here for this community. I thanked key staff last week at Audit and Risk, but I reiterate that. You have been key to my job here being easier and pleasurable, so thank you. My 2 nominees, David and Carla, who supported me twice, even though I'm sure they don't always agree with the way I vote, and that is a true friendship. I mentioned Jeff Lill, who prompted my governance journey, and my ward colleagues, Pat, who guided me for a start and then recognised that I wouldn't always vote the way he did, but was gracious enough to realise that that was part of the process, and Shane. I can stand aside here knowing that a really good governor is filling the post and will take on that senior role. You've got a huge future, Shane, but you've got to balance that with family. Whānau, you know that we've had those conversations, and I look forward to continuing to catch up with you for a beer. Family. No, I've said selfish, but sorry. To Marie, Samuel, Matthew and Sean, thank you so much for allowing me to make this journey. I think back to a quote my son Sean made when he was, I think he'd just turned 16 actually, when we were talking about council, and I've said this before, but he said, all you do is get well dressed and have arguments. and look, if I reflect on that, that is probably the most insightful comment around central and local government I've ever heard in my life. I don't know that we have arguments, but I certainly understand what he's saying, and that is something I'll take away as a highlight. I said last week, the future belongs to those who make it, not to those who oppose it, and I genuinely mean that. I think the future will continue to advance and be very meaningful. And the last thing is thank you. Oh, I'm very honoured to have my father attending just as I'm finishing my speaking, just as he's missed me talking about family. He might have actually got genuine tears out of me rather than just my voice going. I said at the first ever Meet the Candidates meeting, I quoted Billy Connolly, he said, the desire to be a politician should ban you for life from ever becoming one. I know what he's saying. If you're motivated by the ego, don't do it. you're there for, you need to be there for the right reason. So thank you all for 6 years, and I will see you again, but not to lecture, so thank you.
Thank you all for that, and I'll just ask you to all stand and we'll sing a council waiata. That brings us to the end of the public portion of this meeting. Seek a mover and seconder to move into public excluded. Deborah and Shane, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Declare it carried, and we'll adjourn the meeting till 3:15 and come back for the PX. Thank you.